Evening, citizens. This is a video about nothing. Um, it's going to be a self-indulgent video. Um, I seem to have somewhat lost my mojo for making videos. Part of this is because um, I have, my technical capability has been degraded because I've lost all my different recording devices, and the only thing that is left is this laptop, which I can use. I've lost my GoPro, lost my camcorder, um, and everything else that I had. So I can't actually make. I even lost my desktop computer that had um, iMovies on it. So my output has been truncated, to say the least, as you probably are aware. But it's not just a technical issue. Um, I suppose, in a way, it's a psychological issue. Um, I'm not sure I have very much more to say. I mean, there's all sorts of things I could say. I could just, but they're only the sorts of things that everybody else would have been saying. Um, and, other creators with far bigger platforms than me. So I'm not sure that I'm contributing anything unique or of any real value. And, I've been thinking about the whole, the whole rationale for doing this, doing these videos and for the channel in it, in its entirety. Um, I'm coming up to 200 videos now, which seems like a lot, but it's 7 years worth. Um, and I'm not sure. I think I'm on 191 videos or something, 193 or something. And I'm beginning to think I don't have enough in me to even do another 8 or 9 videos. So, I mean, I think I will try to make it to 200, but I'm not sure that there's anything that anything of any real value that I can impart now. Um, it's a strange thing. Um, we can all see the degradation of our society and our country proceeding apace, um, and it's accelerating, as I always thought it would, with the Labour government, who seem to be gearing up to be perhaps the worst government we've ever had. Um, um, their corruption is in plain sight. They can see it. They seem to be concerned not at all with how they look. I mean, um, the taking money off the pensioners for the winter fuel payment is the most curious thing for a Labour government, which is supposed to be the party of the dispossessed. And of course, we know this is all bullshit now. Obviously, we do. But even so, as far as optics are concerned, it is a really strange um, decision they took. And they say these things without anything adding up at all. They're saying that the economy could collapse if we spend 1.4 billion on pension and fuel payments. And obviously there are far more expenses going out to far more useless things than that. So it seems, for on the one hand, they don't care how corrupt they look, and they also don't seem to care how illogical they look. I was speaking to Mrs. X the other day, and she said that she thinks they're doing it on purpose. Um, and I said, how so? And she said, well, they're just doing it because they are showing us that they can do it. They can take some of the most vulnerable people in our society and fuck them over against their own principles, knowing that we can do nothing about it. Like it's the signal. This is what we can do, you know, and we're quite prepared to do whatever we want, and we're quite prepared to um, prepared to obviously betray our own principles and show you that we are betraying our own principles in order to demonstrate our power over you. It's a signal. It's a signal. And I confess I hadn't thought of that. Um, but then Mrs. X has always been somewhat brainier than me, so it's not surprising. Um, but I don't really, it's a puzzle to know what to do next. Um, I have a plan of something to do next, something which I obviously cannot talk about. So you'll have to take that on faith, I'm afraid. But I suppose the good thing is that, which I kind of alluded to before the election, when the Tories were self-immolating. Um, I said at the time that we needed a terrible Labour government um, in order to demonstrate how bad things are. And boy, did we get one. And I mean, it's far worse than I could even have imagined. Not that I've been personally affected by anything just yet. We haven't had a budget yet, obviously. But so many of the things that I I cannot imagine accepting or living under seem as if they're about to come to pass. Complete trampling on the idea of free speech, free expression, the two-tier society, um, a certain demographic seems to get away with all sorts of things, and another much larger demographic gets away with nothing and ends up with prison sentences over words. So, I mean, there's no point rehashing all this stuff because everybody else has rehashed it as well. So it makes no difference. But um, today was that poor woman who said something. She said something horrible and nasty about migrants and was locked up for 2.5 years. A woman who, as far as I can tell, has never been in trouble with the police before. Um, and also, as I understand it, the wife of a Tory councillor. So there's a bit of revenge, isn't there? They hate us, they hate the working class, they hate the working men and women of this country. And also, if they get a chance, they can take their revenge on the Tory rank and file. Now, I'm not talking about Tory MPs and former government ministers who deserve everything they get. But just normal Conservative Party members, they hate them as well. So that was a perfect opportunity to take some more revenge. But I think we we shouldn't be necessarily too downcast about what's happening, because let's say we had a hung parliament, or the Tories had scraped a narrow victory. All we would get is we would get more of the same. Only it would have been drawn out longer, and it would have kept the willfully blind with their eyes shut for longer. We needed to have this Labour government in order to sort of rip the plaster off quickly. It's a pathetic analogy, I know, but you know what I mean. Um, and I think it is working. I think that more and more people are beginning to understand what we're actually up against, what's happening. Um, but it always was a bit of a race against time, and I think it still is. And they are desperate to get their totalitarian controls in before enough people realise what's actually going on. Um, I was in the pub last night with some people, and one of the numbers said that there is a magic number of people who don't follow the herd, and that percentage is between 5 and 8%. And we were sort of somewhat, because it was a libertarian meeting, the third Wednesday's libertarian meeting, and I say it was a meeting. We went to the boozer, but there was a fair amount of you know slapping ourselves on the back, patting ourselves on the back over our not having fought for the COVID shite. And one or two of our numbers saying, well, there was a test and we passed it. And we did, as have many of you, I imagine, if you've been watching this channel for any length of time. But being revealed as people who have passed the moral test is not really going to change anything on its own. It's good to acknowledge it, and it's good to acknowledge that we didn't fall for it when so many others did. I don't even know where I'm going with this, but it's the thing is, what are we going to do about this? What are we to do? And I don't know what we're to do, and this is why this video is about nothing, because I don't have a predestined answer to this. My rambling around things is completely genuine. I don't know where I'm going with this at all. So, but I think we do have to. We have to think, and we have to think again, and we have to think a third time, and then another time, and another time after that, about what we are going to do about it. And we do have to do something, and it's something other than making videos and going on Twitter. We've beaten the living daylights out of that. Certainly I think I have. Um, and somebody was saying, again online, I think it was an American, I think, talking about the same problems they're having over here as we're having over there. And he was saying that we are going to have to take casualties. And this, of course, is what prevents people from actually doing anything meaningful, anything significant, because it's the fear of the law, fear of the power, fear of the establishment, fear of the authorities. This is what happens. And we have been brought up and inculcated into this idea, even though, for instance, I intellectually rail against it, but I'm still subject to my conditioning in that, as a 57-year-old man, I've lived the great majority of my life in a high trust society where we sort of believed that the wrong uns would get their just desserts. There were exceptions, but generally that was the case. And that we know that now isn't the case. It just isn't. But we're still, um, our reflex is still to be that. Is still to think that we are law-abiding people in a decent society, and so out of those two things, we are law-abiding people in a decent society. Well, the decent society is no more. Decent society is gone. It's finished. There is no rule of law. We don't live in a democracy of, in any real sense. We are ruled by an establishment and ruled by institutions which we and our fathers and our grandfathers built that have turned against us. So nothing in the British state do we have any ownership over. We have ownership of ourselves and our own behaviour, and we still just about have some sort of claim on the land itself. So those two things, having a decent society and being law-abiding citizens, we've still got one of those. We're still, one of those two things still exists. We're still law-abiding citizens, but we live in a society that is gone, a decent society that is gone. It's vanished. It's been degraded and sold off and given to others, and we are still law-abiding. Now that isn't going to work, is it? The law isn't the law any longer. The law is a set of rules that are arbitrary and are stacked against us. We are subject to the law in the way that others of other demographics and the people at the top are not subject. So I'm wondering how long this lag takes, and I include myself in this. I know that the country that I was born in no longer exists. It's gone. It exists only in memory. But I remain with some small discrepancies, I remain a law-abiding citizen. And really, should I be? I'm not sure that I should be. And I think you all have to ask yourself this as well. And to take a sort of fairly well-known but hackneyed example, if we take the founding fathers of the United States and my limited knowledge of them, but I was wondering if we go right back to the beginning, to go to the signatories of the Declaration of Independence. Now, I seem to remember there was 56 signatories. And they're all the ones that we've heard of, you know, George Washington and Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson and John Quincy Adams and, you know, all the others. But the majority of the people that we've never heard of, most of us have never heard of. And certainly most of us over here have never heard of them. And I was, like I say, I don't know much about this history, but I just started looking into it. Of course, my first search was via Wikipedia, of course, which is not an auspicious start, obviously. But when I looked into the fates of all of the signatories that subsequently, after they'd signed the Declaration of Independence and they'd been through the Revolutionary War, or whatever it was, I expected to find that quite a lot of them would have been arrested and imprisoned and tortured and executed by the British. And I mean, I only did a cursory search, so I'm quite happy to be corrected. But as far as I could find, none of them were. And it seems that they all managed to get through the War of Independence, unless they died of natural causes or whatever. They all managed to get through the War of Independence and became citizens or officials of the new nation of the United States. And I was surprised by this because I would have thought during the war, which lasted for what, 7 years, something like that, 7 years. I would have thought that when the British made some gains, they would have captured some people, and then they would have said, "Well, you're one of the signatories. You're one of the treasonous ones," and I thought they would have been hung or hanged. Um, but it seems not. You know, like I say, I'm prepared to be corrected on this, but I couldn't find any, and it made me think that our reticence for resistance may be misplaced. Um, there's a great meme comes on the internet. It's got George Washington. He's got sunglasses, and it says, "It's only treason if you lose," which is that's a pretty good that's a pretty good thought. I would have thought. And so the thing is, I was thinking because I'd seen that, I thought, well, George Washington didn't lose, and all the other ones we haven't heard of didn't lose. But I thought there would have been quite a number of people that we'd never heard of who did lose, who were strung up or imprisoned or whatever. It turns out that wasn't the case. Um, so I think maybe, without wanting to get too Buddhist about it, or too Marcus Aurelius about it, um, maybe the fear of what might happen is greater than the reality of what will happen. Now, this last summer and the August disturbances notwithstanding, this is, certainly people have gone to jail for really not very much, and really for quite long stretches. Life destroying lengths, sentence lengths. 2.5, 3.5 years. Which that's enough time for you to lose your house. You obviously lose your job. If you have a business, you lose the business. You lose your house. You may well lose your marriage and access to your children. Even if you make it out alive, even if you get through the other side. So these are not minor sentences. And of course, they were unreasonably severe to send a message, and the message has been received loud and clear. But I still maintain that so long as you're not daft and reckless, and you don't get triggered too easily, and we should be fairly used to being triggered now of all the things that have happened. The stories that come up on X and stuff like that, the horrendous things that come up, there are so many that it's begun to wash over me. These things are just normal now. People getting stabbed in the street, and women getting raped in broad daylight on buses and things like that. These are now so commonplace that there is no significance to them. And that is we have been sort of dumbed down. We've been kind of inured to that kind of thing. So we should be quite. There's Mrs. X coming through. Look, wondering what I'm ranting about. But we should be quite good about not getting triggered now, because so many bad and terrible things have happened so often that it's quite easy not to be triggered now. We just expect the most horrendous things to be completely normal. So we've been sort of conditioned now to accept the unacceptable as normal. So, one thing that the recent prison sentences have done is, one thing it has made us realise is that we shouldn't lose control of our emotions. And we should understand that this is deliberate. All of these things are done to get a rise out of us. And of course, people who were closer to what happened in Southport, then it might have been, obviously for some people it really was personal, but if you were just in the vicinity, or it was somewhere close by to you, and you weren't used to dealing with people trying to get a rise out of you all the time, you might well have lost your rag, and people did, and they wrote some pretty vile and horrible things on the internet, which, as a free speech absolutist, this is, I'm pretty much a free speech absolutist. I would accept that actually calling for violence against someone else, I would accept that as being something you could take action against. I don't really like it, because I think it removes the agency of the listener. If I go up to that bloke and tell that bloke to kill that bloke, and he does it, well, it's his fault. I may not be blameless, but it's more his fault than it is mine. And by him listening to me and doing what I've encouraged him to do, diminishes him as a human agent. So, and I think being a free speech absolutist is really the only way that you can. I think it's the only way to it's the only way to behave, really, because any compromise on that is entirely subjective, because it's somebody else's decision on what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable to say, but also to listen to. And I don't really accept that people can tell me what I can and can't say, and I certainly don't accept that people can tell me what I can and can't listen to. I mean, I think there are all sorts of things that one shouldn't say for all sorts of reasons, and much of these reasons are to do with decency and kindness. But I don't think there should be anything that it should be illegal to say, no matter how difficult that might be, because I don't think there's any other choice. I don't think there's any other way of doing it which is not subject to somebody else's interpretation. And it seems, of course, that those people that were supposedly, what was the phrase, they whipping up hatred, they weren't actually British people anyway. They were people from overseas, and they weren't, and not only from Russia, if indeed there were any from Russia. But that's always that's always the trope, isn't it? People were getting whipped up by Russian bots. Rather than actually getting whipped up by the murder of three young children, three young girls. And under those kind of provocations, people lost their rags and they said stupid things. And then there's a woman today, never been in trouble with the police, as far as I can tell, has now gone to jail for 2.5 years. 2.5 years. No, that's Mrs. X calling me a weirdo. Yeah. Yeah, she often does that. Um, so I think we shouldn't be fearful. We should take care not to lose our tempers. And if you lose your temper, you're vulnerable. I remember somebody once writing about. I think it might have been about Ronnie Kray, the Kray twins, or Ronnie Kray, and they said he was able to do really quite violent things without losing his temper. Now, I'm not suggesting that we should be like Ronnie Kray or anything, but it does illustrate what one is capable of doing. Is not necessarily dependent on whether or not you lose your temper. In fact, it shouldn't be, I suppose. But I still look. I don't really know where I'm going with this video. I'm just saying these things because I'm just trying to work out these thoughts in my head, and I'm a bit frustrated because this is self-imposed frustration because I haven't done anything creative in a while. I haven't made any decent videos or anything like that. So, this is a complete ramble, but the ramble is genuine. Yeah, because I don't know where I'm going with this. I've got a lot of loyal viewers, and I think they kind of deserve something from me, really. But um, quite how long this is going to go on for now, I don't know. Like I say, I'm going to struggle to make my 200 video mark, and maybe it's enough. Maybe there isn't anything else to say, but um, I think we should need to find ways of fighting back effectively, and surround yourself with people who agree with you, not just because just to be in your own echo chamber, but um, the normies will drag us into hell. They've already decided they're not going to talk about COVID anymore, even though they revealed themselves to be compliant totalitarians. So we don't really want to be around people like that. Certainly I don't, and I don't think you do either. But something happened recently. There was uh, no, I'm not going to talk about that actually because it's a little bit personal, so I'm not going to talk about that. But suffice to say that if you think you've been fucked over by some institution or not, um, I think you should try and find a way of getting back at them in whichever way you can to make it to make it expensive for them to fuck you over next time, and even to rue the day that they fucked you over in the first place. Just make it expensive for them. I mean, there was a guy who was at the group last night, and he was just saying he's got all these speeding fines, ULEZ fines. I don't know if it was speeding fines, ULEZ fines and such things. And he says he challenges everything. He challenges everything, and I think it's become second nature to him now, and he just gets things dismissed all the time because most people don't do that. Most people don't challenge things. They just think, it's bloody 60 quid, isn't it? And then then I'll have the bailiffs round if I don't pay it, and if you don't pay it within 14 days, it goes up 120 quid, and so people do. It's a way of getting rid of the problem, but it is kind of, we've all been guilty of it. I have, you know. Uh, I mean, I once didn't pay for my petrol, and it was a mistake. I didn't realise, didn't think about it. It was a petrol station I've been using for years, 15 years or whatever it was, and of course they found me through my number plate, and but they knew me at the petrol station. But the situation, the the process is that you'd think that if somebody hadn't paid their petrol station, that it would be dealt with internally in the petrol station. Oh, this bloke, he didn't pay his. When take a note of the register, when he comes comes in again, say, look, you didn't pay for your petrol last time, and because you don't frequent a petrol station for 15 years and then suddenly decide to steal petrol. I mean, it's an oversight. It's a mistake, obviously. But, in our low trust society, we can't do that. it has to go. At the end of the day, when they're topped up, he didn't pay. Right, it gets reported. There's this there's this outfit bullshit authority called Forecourt Watch or Forecourt Eye or something, and they send you a letter, and you've got to pay for petrol, and then it's an administration fee, and if you don't pay within 14 days, it goes up, and it's the same old shit all the time, and it's this the degrading of anything personal. I mean, it's a petrol station, and the petrol station is part of a multinational oil company, so it can't be sort of like, this is not the 1950s, obviously, but the fact that there, the first I heard of it was I get a shitty letter telling me that I've, I'm a cunt and I owe them money, and because I'm a cunt, I've got to pay them more money, which is basically what the letter was saying, and you just sort of yearn for the idea of the 50s where, you just go in next week and say, look, you didn't pay for your petrol. Look, can you pay for your petrol? But there are certain things that you have to sort of, you've got to roll with the punches in a way. I mean, my work colleague, he tells me about things that he's seen online and stuff like that. And I know exactly where he's coming from, and I totally agree on nearly everything he says. But he does this sort of thing where because he's a very good man, he is indignant about what's happened. He's indignant. He said, why has this happened? And, we don't deserve this, and this person didn't deserve this, and it's a righteous indignation, and it is righteous. He is right to be pissed off about this stuff. But he's still harking back to the idea that we live in a decent society. And we don't. We live in an indecent society. England as it was is gone. As is Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, Western Europe, United States, Canada, Australia. These free countries are not free anymore. I'm not even sure if there is a free country in the world anymore. I'm not even sure if there is a democracy left. As far as I can tell, the only free countries that exist, and even they're not free completely, are Switzerland and in some way, the United States, but not in every place and not totally. But the idea of thinking of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland as a beacon of democracy is just for the birds. It just doesn't exist anymore. And we have to, in order to make sense of this, we have to abandon this idea that there is anything good in the British state anymore, because there isn't. That's not to say there isn't anything good in Britain, but the only thing that is good are the people and the land itself. Everything else is poison. Everything. There's not a drop of goodness at all in anything in the British state. Not a single thing. And I will be astonished if anybody could convince me otherwise. And we have to abandon the idea of the England that we grew up. And I'm saying England because I live in England, but this applies also to Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, obviously. But and our imaginings of our home country. And another thing that we have to sort of accept that it won't get better until everything about the state has been destroyed. And then we can build it back up again. And we can, and we will. But everything has to be destroyed first. There is no salvaging it, I don't think. Um, and another thing that uh, we have to acknowledge, I think, is, and this is a sort of difficult one for me because I've always tried to think, well, we may not be may not be as successful as the Germans and the Japanese, or even in some respects the Americans or the Chinese. But I always used to think, well, yeah, but we're a fifth or sixth largest economy, but that doesn't mean shit. That means shit. The only reason we're the fifth or sixth largest economy is because the amount of billionaires that live here, billionaires and multimillionaires that live here, and they are leaving in their droves. Thousands of them are leaving for all sorts of reasons. A lot of it's economic, but also there's loads of other shit as well. Um, and so if you take all the super rich out of this country, we're not fifth or sixth or something. We're about 25th, maybe even less. In that respect, we're not special. But one of the reasons that we're quite a long way down that list now is because there are so many people here who aren't British and don't give a shit about the place. It's not surprising that we've fallen down the league tables. Now, I mean, being high up on the GDP, it's just a pissing contest. It doesn't really make any difference. It doesn't make any difference. I mean, we should welcome the fact that other countries are becoming wealthier. Um, but we should, along with losing any faith in the British state, what we also need to lose faith in is the idea that we are one of the most successful nations. And we're not. And it's probably not our fault. It's the fault of all the millions of third world savages that have come here and all the treacherous tosspots at the top. So it's probably not our fault. So when the time comes to rebuild, I feel completely confident that we will be able to do it. But we've got to go through this. We've got to go through this trial. And like I was saying about my colleague, he was just getting so indignant about, oh, do you hear what they did to them? And this Christian preacher who was he was arrested for praying outside an abortion clinic, or these people who got this single mother who got raped on a bus and in broad daylight, all these sorts of things, just horrible stuff that never used to happen, and yet happens so often now that nobody blinks an eye about it. And he's kind of indignant about it. I just think we have to get rid of this indignation. I mean, indignation as a path to something else is worth having, because it centers us morally. But we mustn't be. We should stop being. We should stop taking it personally. I suppose that's what I'm saying. Um, because all of this is a tactic. It's all a tactic to make us feel that horrible things are happening all the time, and there's nothing that we can do about it. And all we can do about it is is appeal to some higher authority and say, well, why is this horrible thing happening to us? This horrible thing is happening to us is because they want these horrible things to happen to us. They want these horrible things to happen to us because they hate us and they view us as a problem to be dealt with. And they want to impoverish us. And they want to demoralize us. Now, what I would say is, again, I don't know where I'm going with this video. I've got no conclusion. I'm looking at the little timer at the bottom of the screen saying I've done nearly 50 minutes and I've said almost nothing. But maybe there might be some little pearls of something in my nothingness. Uh, uh, but I think we have to we have to be psychologically prepared for when the lights go out, and when I mean, you know, we could all be like preppers and buy 3 years worth of tin goods and put all of our money into Bitcoin or something. If some bit of people are able to do that, then that's fine. But most of us can't do that. Most of us are like corks on the ocean. When the shit hits the fan, we'll be out on in the cold with everyone else. But at least if we are psychologically prepared, we will be in a better position than all the normies who will just they will just be bewildered. When the lights go out, they won't know what to do. I'm not saying I'm going to know what to do, but I'm not going to be surprised by it. And it's going to sort the wheat from the chaff. That's for sure. And of course, if a economic catastrophe happens to us, I mean, half of our problems will fuck off back where they came from. As soon as the gravy train stops, I mean, why would they want to be in England or Scotland, or Northern Ireland or Wales? Why would they even want to be here? Yeah, they can go back to their own shitholes and leave us to fix things, which we will. I mean, in a way, you could, it's almost like you can you can almost hope for it in a way, can't you? Because then you'd know that you then had to get stuck in, and also for people at the bottom half of the ladder, there will be a leveling, because all the people with you know high-ranking middle management, upper and middle management jobs who can't do anything unless they're doing something on their laptop. You can't even change a fucking tire on their own car. Um, there'll be a leveling. They're not gonna. They're gonna. A lot of them will sink without trace, and most of us won't. So even though I do sometimes wonder what I'm supposed to be doing, and particularly with this channel, I haven't done anything sort of creative for a while. Um, um, but I think that we have we shouldn't be we shouldn't be downhearted. We should be at least psychologically prepared for the fall. Um, the great problem, of course, is that if they get their control apparatus completely in place before enough people wake up, then we could be in trouble. But I don't think we are in trouble actually, because I think they've been trying to build their control apparatus for a long time, and they're still not there. And unless they're playing 5G chess, I mean, these people at the top of politics, they're just morons. I mean, are we afraid of Angela Rayner? David Lammy, who can't get 1 point at Mastermind. Um, these people, the ones that we see, are morons. The ones that we don't see, that's a different matter. But I think you can, I think people can tell who's a pretender and who's an idiot. Um, you know, I don't think that Angela Rayner is any kind of secret genius. You know, maybe I'm being misogynistic. Maybe maybe she's a genius, uh, but I don't think so. And I'm still looking forward to the day when Matt Hancock is discovered outside in the street without a bodyguard, and he's recognised. I'm looking forward to that day. But losing one's faith is not an easy thing to accept. But you might have to lose it anyway. Yeah, I'm not talking about religious faith, obviously. I'm talking about faith in one's country and one's culture and one's society. Um, Although, really, the loss of faith of is specific, and that a loss of faith will be a good thing. If it's a loss of faith in the state as distinct from the country. It's the state that has been stolen from us. It's the state that is our jailer. The state doesn't produce anything. The state has no culture. Has no prosperity. It doesn't make the world a better place. The state is just there to sustain itself, and it is just a parasite, and that is all it is. And we should recognise it for that. The dam will break at some point. They think that the dam will never break. They think that we'll always do what we're told, and that we will always respect the law in the end, and we'll just say mustn't grumble, and just shuffle about and moan and complain about the weather, and we will do that. Definitely, we will do that as well. But there will come a breaking point. There will, and no matter what their algorithms and all the number crunching that they will have done in order to try to push us right to the edge without us breaking, there comes a point where there is no equation that can tell them that. And when the break comes, it will be unstoppable. The break comes basically when people have nothing left to lose. Unfortunately, it will likely get very, very ugly, at least for a while. I'm thinking post-revolutionary France stuff. But we should be prepared. We should accept that this is coming. And at least in our heads, if not in any other way, we should plan accordingly. But if we do it right, we can get back to being free.